So it's a pleasure to be with you today for the second National Conference on Deposit Return Systems. I have been working in the field of deposit return systems for nearly my entire career, over 30 years. So it's a pleasure to share with you some of the most recent developments at a global level. So why don't we get moving? I think I only have 15 minutes, so we're going to start. So first of all, just very quickly, some background information about Reloop. Who are we? We were founded almost 10 years ago in 2015. We are an international not-for-profit organization working at the center of policymaking with governments, industries, and NGOs. Bring together and work collaboratively with a diverse group of partners around the world whose insights and expertise help shape our policy positions and recommendations. Our vision is a world free of waste, where natural resources remain resources, and our mission is to lead the transition into the global circular economy. Lastly, a tool that we just released. It's called the What We Waste Dashboard, and you can watch a video, you can see a training session, you will see a slew of very illustrative data representations, what's going on around the world in over 210 countries. We invite you to get training. We invite you to seek out some of the very valuable information on this dashboard. This is the first of several dashboards to be introduced in 2025 and 2026. So keep an eye on Reloop. These are very helpful tools for all of you. And there are some really interesting dynamics on these dashboards that you have control over. But probably the most useful tool for anyone that is interested in deposit return is the Global Deposit Book. It features, I believe, 57 programs around the world, and it is the sort of Bible of deposit return programs, and we are going to bake that into a dashboard in March. Let's take a quick look at the history of deposit return programs. We've seen them, they've been around for a very, very long time. Most of them really started in my country, Canada, for single-use containers. And you can see here in the 70s, there was a lot of deposit return programs pushed American states and Canadian provinces. And it was primarily a reaction to litter from single-use containers that were coming onto the market. We saw a lot of growth in the 80s in the United States and also in Canada. And then, of course, we also saw quite a bit of movement in the 90s. And then we saw Norway, which was really one of the first European countries to come on board, also develop a single-use deposit return program. We saw a lot of movement in the early 2000s. Again, Canada started to expand their programs, and we saw more movement in Europe. And then from 2010 to 2019, we saw a lot of movement in Australia. In fact, Australia is the only continent in the world that has deposit return across the country. But let's take a look at some of the existing programs in Europe, which is really where most of the deposit return activity is going on. This is the European map up till 2022. And you can see here, there's a whole bunch of countries, most of them in Northern Europe, in Scandinavia. But of course, we do have big Germany here with about 85 million people. Within 2 years, from 2022 to 2024, a number of countries joined as well, including Slovakia, Hungary, Latvia. The Netherlands expanded their program to include all PET bottles and cans, with the Republic of Ireland, Austria, and Malta and Romania. So a very huge jump in the number of implementations of deposit return in Europe. About 347 million people will have access to DRS across the world. And actually, by the end of 2027, which is what you see here, this is total population covered by DRS. You see a huge jump in 2027, where we will have about 592 million people covered. This is the most recent data that we have, which is basically 2023 for European countries. And I use them because they are typically what we call best in class. You can see remarkable recovery rates here in the European countries. The average is, of course, 87. The median is 89. So those are pretty firm numbers. And those rates are actually only getting better. Because if you look at this bar chart, you'll see Latvia with a 78, but that was just at the beginning of the program. So that program has been really successful in a very short period of time. So that's going to go up. And of course, the Netherlands, which is still in its expansion of PET bottles, we're going to see that 68% go up as well. So those numbers will probably hit 90 plus the next time I show you this. So one of the things we did at Reloop was we wanted to better understand what would be the impact on climate change, but also the impact on waste if we were able to get to 90%, but at the same time, be able to take the material that we collected and be able to recycle it right back into bottles and cans. And we wanted to look at the dual action of both the high collection, but also the high quality recycling, closed loop recycling, where you can actually have it multiple times around. And as a simple example, instead of taking a PET bottle and recycle it into my blouse, for example, which would only have one more life, if it went back into a PET bottle, was collected again because it has high collection rates in that country, and back into a bottle and a bottle and a bottle, there is an exponential benefit in terms of the reduction of virgin extraction and all of the pollution and energy associated with that. So we wanted to look at that dual piece. And we have a report, which you can see on our website, called Dual Action Approach for Circular Drinks Packaging in Europe, which gives you the results. And I won't go through them now because we don't have time, but suffice it to say, the results, when you looked at it from a 10 and 20-year perspective for brand owners that must procure material like plastics, metal, and glass, it was an eye-opening experience for them, because what they saw was the DRS paves the path for more sustainable packaging, truly sustainable packaging, drinks packaging in the future. So this is where we were so excited by the results that we created what we call Target 90 and an entire Target 90 campaign. And we went with this information, which was essentially promoting the fact that Target 90, getting to 90 and achieving high levels of closed loop recycling, was incredibly beneficial for all of the businesses in the EU member states, which are 27 countries. And I'd like to tell you a story about coalition building. We presented this to this group. There was buy-in, and then it resulted in a position paper, which you can see online, supporting deposit return, supporting ambitious targets, and all these key logos. And you don't need to know who they all are, but I can tell you the top row are beverage brands. The very companies that are going to be subject to introducing the program, paying for the program, monitoring the program, reporting on the program to government, they were the ones that said, yeah, we actually support it. And we emphasized the need for 90% separate collection target for beverage packaging by 2029, and supported adopting effective DRS in any member states that would fall short of those targets. So we communicated it with this huge group of companies together. We lobbied the European Union. We used materials like you're seeing right now to really spread the word about why this was a good idea. And also to recognize the fact that for those that are interested in reusable beverage containers, understanding that these systems are very well matched, because deposit return is simply a collection system. And whether you collect, like in this chart, recyclables and you put them through the recycling loop, or you collect refillables and you wash them, inspect them, and fill them, it's one collection network. And therefore, it can serve both types of packaging. And we were successful. Adopted by the European Parliament in late 2024 and published in 2025 is the PPWR, the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, which you can look up online. And it represents a significant step forward for Europe's commitment to a circular economy and environmental stewardship. Article 50 mandates deposit return for beverage cans and plastic bottles up to 3 liters to achieve a 90% collection for recycling target by 2029. Member states, countries can be exempted if they reach 80% for recycling by 2026, and that exemption would be removed if they're not hitting 90% over 3 years. Let's take a look at the last 2 years. So here we have in blue, these were the countries that were already on board in Europe. In blue, you have the countries that got introduced in the last 2 years. It represents a population of 41% covered, up from 29 only before 2022. Some of the results that we already have, which are quite impressive, that I'll go through right now. In Slovakia, we saw incredible litter reduction for both PET and cans within 2 years of the program starting. Cans represented about 20% of litter and PET about 15%, and 18 months later, they only represented respectively 2 and 3%. So clearly a success in Slovakia. In addition, in Slovakia, you can see here the bars represent the number of wasted, so non-recovered, wasted being incinerated, landfilled, or littered, per capita in the country. And you can see as soon as Slovakia introduced deposit return, that wastage figure, this is for PET, dropped significantly in a very quick period of time. So this is more evidence showing that deposit return, if designed properly, can have a massive impact on waste and litter. Let's take a look at Latvia, also quite a small country, but what's interesting here is the amount of beverage litter found across 17 coastal sites decreased by 56% from before and after the DRS. And the average reductions of material, you can see here in terms of litter, are massive. I mean, who doesn't want to have a system that within 2 years reduces the amount of plastic bottles on beaches by 61%? To me, this is a no-brainer. Let's look at Latvia in terms of wastage. Again, you see the waste per capita of PET and a huge decline falling shortly after the introduction of the DRS. And just so you know, these screen captures are all from our What We Waste dashboard, and you can get these yourself for any country that you want to see. And also, of course, I've just showed you PET, but I could have shown you glass as well, or I should say metal as well, but I only have a certain period of time. So let's continue then. This is Malta. Again, you can see that massive reduction in wasted containers per capita that they experienced right after they introduced the program. Huge success. Here we have the Netherlands. Reminder, they just expanded to include big PET bottles. And by the third quarter, they saw a 30% decrease. By the fourth quarter, a 65% decrease. And between the 3-year spread, about 70% decrease. For cans, very similar, a 33% reduction. It's not even 2 years. Looking at the Republic of Ireland, a very new program, but also very immediate impacts, finding that a 30% reduction in can, 20% reduction in litter since the introduction of the DRS. Very impressive reduction figures. Moving on, let's take a look at the next 2 years in Europe. And again, here we have not as many, but far greater populations. We have Austria, that has just introduced their new deposit return program on the beginning of this month in January. And then we have these 4 countries, 2 of which are quite huge, Spain and Portugal, which will be introducing in the next 2 years. This is a global look. And you can see in the next 2 years, we have Uruguay, Singapore, Queensland, and Tasmania introducing, or in the case of Queensland, it's going to be an expansion. And then we have Cyprus, Moldova, England, Scotland, probably Wales, but we're still trying to understand Wales, Northern Ireland, Serbia, and Kosovo that will all be introducing deposit return program. I wanted to share 3 slides with you with some data that is interesting, and you can get everything on our website. This is on public polling, whether or not the public likes deposit return. We have tracked public polls from all over the world. They're all available in this fact sheet, which was published in February. And this is a summary chart. And you can see overwhelming support for introduction of deposit return, support for any existing deposit return programs in those countries, and where there's an expansion on the table, support for expansions, meaning the scope of the containers covered or the types of beverages covered. So just to show you the evidence to show that there is significant public support for DRS with studies used over the last 20 years. The next interesting piece of research from Reloop that I'd like to draw your attention to is this fact sheet released last year called Consumer Participation in DRS, Drivers, Barriers, and Implications. We have looked at what drives people to participate and what makes them not want to participate. And as designers of future deposit return programs, an extremely important read, so you can design the most convenient system for your public possible. And finally, a study that we've been wanting to do for many years to answer that question about what is the impact on beverage sales if we introduce a deposit return program. I will not go through all the points right now, but I will put them on this slide for your knowledge. The conclusion, however, is that deposit return systems support recycling without harming beverage sales, reinforcing their role as a practical solution for sustainability. We looked at before and after in multiple countries around the world. Everything is in the study, and we did not show any evidence of a direct impact on sales. And with that, I'll say thank you. I hope you have a good conference, and I'm looking forward to answering some questions.